Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics in the state legislature. I'm your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and I'm joined again today by Assemblyman Juan Alanis from Stanislaus, Merced. What's your district number, Juan?
22.
22, District 22. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
It's always good times.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What a way to start our Monday.
Exactly. No, it's a good way to start Monday. So what are some of the things you're working on this year? I know we're back to a new legislative session. What are some of the stuff you're looking to do?
So as I was working on last year, same public safety stuff again, anything I can help with Prop 47, retail theft. And, spot bills are becoming a big thing right now with the 2-year term coming to an end. And and I know today you have to do certain amendments or whatever to keep them alive. So that's something
gotta get those amendments into legislative councle today, right?
Yes.
So
that was a big talk with one of today's meetings with my staff. And I don't know. We'll see where we're going to go with that right now. I think we're up to like 20 something, maybe 26
nice.
bills.
That's a lot of bills.
Yes. And if one of our colleagues gets her way, I won't be able to do any of those if we limit to 25.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're violating Kate Sanchez's bill limits. That's right. So we should check Kate's ledge package to see if she's under the limit.
Yeah, she's following her own. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are your hopes / thoughts on the possibility of a Prop 47? Something happening on Prop 47 this year?
I really hope we bring some consequences back. Our businesses, our communities have gone way too long without law and order.
Yeah.
And so hopefully this is the year, and we'll be part of that.
Yeah, there's that citizens initiative that's, I think, over 500,000 signatures now, which is, I think, a really important part of this conversation, right?
Agreed. And I think we need to come at it from all sides. Just you guys keep doing your thing, we'll do our thing. And I mean, the big point is just crossing that finish line.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think we're gonna get to something. So let's recap a little bit of what's going on this week. The big news, obviously, Legislative Analyst's Office came out and said, remember that $58 billion shortfall that we projected in December? Well, now it's going to be $73 billion. Revenues are coming in a lot lower than expected. And so the LAO, which is our nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office, said, we're looking even worse than we planned. So a $73 billion deficit, $15 billion more than they previously projected. But more importantly, what is it, like double or over double what the governor projected was about a $37 billion deficit. I think that is the big story. Is that this gap between the governor and the nonpartisan LAO continues to widen, right? So I don't know if you've been following that, but
I've heard a little bit of it here and there about that. I'm pretty sure the governor's probably thinking about that at night again, as you brought that up with him one other time.
Yep.
So I'm sure he's thinking about that even more, and I'm sure if we would have kept more Californians here in the state, they would have been able to help with that deficit with their income and their revenue that they'd be generating.
I think that's a good point too. I haven't really made that point before, but yeah, I think you're right. Like we had net loss of California residents.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about it. Yeah, businesses, right? Taxpayers.
Mm-hmm. Like in my district, you have Hilmar Cheese, one of the largest cheese producers, I think in the country, maybe at least on this side of the Mississippi. And they moved to a different state, or they moved their new operation to a different state. So that's a lot of revenue right there as well we could have had. Yeah.
I mean, and we're seeing that over and over again. And yeah, I think you're right. So I think I'm interested to see, how the governor responds to this. I think the initial comments from the governor's office have basically been like, yeah, we got to fix this. Right. But, what we choose to focus on to prioritize the cut, I think is still a big question mark. So, but certainly we're not moving in the right direction.
Well, it's definitely the question. What is going to get cut?
Yeah.
That's what everybody's wondering. That's what we were wondering with him at that event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when we saw him, yeah. And he promised us, right, that this was not going to be too bad this year, but it's starting to look pretty bad. I mean, $73 billion is not a small number.
That's a lot of money. That's a B, not an M.
Yeah, especially when you have 30 something in reserves, right? Like that's over double your reserves. You're really in a
Yeah.
bad place. Um so speaking of people leaving California, there was actually this story about people coming back to California, which I wanted to be fair, right? And so I wanted I thought it was an interesting story. These tech executives who kind of moved to Florida and left, they're now, I guess, moving back some of their operations back to the Bay Area because of the workforce, right? We do have an amazing workforce, obviously, in the Bay Area for the tech workforce. But it's mostly around this new AI boom, right? All of this growing AI technology, and so there's a little bit of activity, I guess, coming back to California because we have such a great workforce, which we do. Now, the governor's office is kind of portraying this as, see, California is awesome. Even when you leave, you come back. But the thing is, it's like this is the problem though, is we never change anything. We never acknowledge the problems. Especially the governor. He always is just trying to say, we don't have problems. We're just awesome. And I think that's the wrong attitude to have. We should be grateful that a couple people came back, but we should also be saying, why did we lose all these other people?
Or how can we get the rest of them to come back?
Yeah, and we're not just going to rely on our good weather and our good workforce, to keep people here. Like at certain point, we're going to keep losing people.
And that's what usually does keep people here is the state. You have so many different
yeah,
adventures you can go on in this state,
yeah,
the mountains, the ocean, you name it, it's all here. And that's like our bread and butter here.
yeah,
And when people aren't wanting that anymore, they just want to come back and visit.
yeah. It's crazy. I mean, and it's just this continued kind of reliance on tech too, right? Like we obviously, um, have a lot of great tech companies, but those are very volatile sometimes, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw the Nvidia story. I don't know if you saw
No, I didn't.
they hit like their market cap was just insanely high. They broke all these records. It became like seventh or eighth company worth over $1 trillion. And they make, they're known for making like over the years, like graphics processing chips and stuff, but they make these GPUs that are incredibly important for the development of AI and running machines that run AI. And so it's going to be really interesting to see that. But that's volatile stuff. Like so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. Let's see. So we've got a new survey out from the PPIC. So they usually do these every couple months. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around here a little bit. I apologize. So Californians in their government poll from the PPIC. And they asked a lot of questions in this one. I believe the governor's approval rating dropped below 50%, dropped from about 5 points to when they did it. I think last time they did the survey was in December, so it hasn't really been that long.
No, that's a lot
And
in just a short amount of time.
yeah, what do you think the reason for that is?
Well, maybe what reason? Maybe I don't know if we should look the other way, not reasons why, but other things that have been going on,
yeah,
like
yeah,
why they wouldn't pick it or why they would pick him.
yeah, it's true.
But obviously the budget's a big thing, and that's been the biggest push right now. Is like, what are all the factors of why that is happening? Again, like we brought up, the businesses that have left, the people that have left,
Yeah,
crime rates are going up, so people also are being pushed out because of that. But I think also just Prop 47 in general. I think
yeah,
people
yeah.
also are tired of it. And I think maybe this is their way of showing it as well, saying, hey, we want something different.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, some of the key findings from their survey. Let's see. 4 in 10 Californians name economic conditions and homelessness as the top issues for the governor and legislature to work on in 2024. Also, two of the places, at least for homelessness, where we're not doing very well, right? So I think that
But we're dumping a lot of money into
we're
it.
dumping a lot of money into it, a lot of promises, a lot of funding, but not getting the results. I think that definitely plays a role in that approval rating. Um, about 6 in 10 Californians believe the state will have bad times financially during the next 12 months. I don't know why it's that low. I think it's pretty clear we're headed towards a tough budget
I don't think
year.
they need a crystal ball for that one.
Yeah, exactly. Um, 40% think the state budget situation's a big problem. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, they repeated themselves a little bit here. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and I think it's just it's really tough when we have all these challenges. We're not getting the results that we should be getting, and we do need to shift directions. But is there an appetite for that? I don't know. So. Speaking of the economy, well, this is more of a affordability issue, so we're going back up a little bit here. But there's this great article in Politico about the utility bills skyrocketing. It's so basically, I just love the. I got to read you the headline here because it was. I thought it was pretty interesting. So the headline out of Politico was Democrats push climate action, then utility bills skyrocketed. Electricity bills are biting lawmakers in coastal Democratic-leaning districts. So this was, in large part, a little bit about this utility fixed charge that we've been talking about. The legislature passed it in 2022. Now, a bunch of the legislatures that voted for it a year and a half ago are now out saying, what is the PUC doing? What is happening with all of these energy cost increases? And now they're railing against it a year and a half after they passed it. And so I just don't know if you've been watching any of that and have any thoughts on it.
Well, I see that common theme up here in Sacramento. We push for something one year and then the next year we change it.
Yeah.
Like artificial turf, grass, whatever, one year and then the next year. Oh wait, no wait. You got microplastics or whatever else in there.
Right. That's a good example. Like, yeah.
Or we've done like fire retardant stuff on tents, and then next year they're like, oh wait, don't do that because it's toxic to you and stuff like that. So I see that's a common theme up here.
It is, yeah. So one of the legislators were quoted that I think that voted for the bill initially, actually, but he said, Californians are fed up. My constituents are pissed off. I know because they told me over and over again at community coffees that I had in the fall and the winter, the rates keep going up. Okay, so this article then goes on to kind of talk about some of the climate mandates that we've placed on utility companies, and just like a lot of the things that we have set in motion in California have really led to these cost increases. In fact, I think it's something like 120% increases in the last decade. So you're talking about consumers. We passed all these policies that sounded good, and maybe their goals are good, right? Improving the climate, that's great. But when you pass those policies, do you think about the impact to the consumer? Do you think
unintended consequences?
Do you think about the unintended consequences?
It's another big word up here that seems to be a common theme.
But we don't, right? Like so often we pass these bills because of their intent, but we don't think about how they're actually going to impact everyday Californians.
Mm-hmm.
And so just another example of that one. So let's see here. We've got, are you familiar with I wanted to ask you about this in your district, the organic recycling law that passed a few years back?
I know they're working on that in my area.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, because there was this article in AP this week about, California passed this food waste recycling bill a few years ago, and now everyone's trying to implement it, and they're struggling, not surprisingly. But how does it work at your house? Like, what do you guys separate organic waste?
So I've had this same. I've seen my wife like throw some things in the garbage. Like, wait a minute, what are you doing with that? It's like, we don't have anywhere else to put it unless you go straight out to the driveway or whatever, right where the garbage cans are. I have a recycling and I have a garbage. That's all I have in my house.
Okay, that's what you have. Okay.
And I've always had that, but now I got to have a third one. It's like, well, where does that go? And then even outside with my garbage cans, my area for the garbage cans is built for two.
Okay.
So now I have a third one that just hangs out like, hey guys, hi,
totally.
Don't forget, hey, I'm blue. I'm the blue guy here. And so now I either have to pour some more concrete or make the area bigger so all three can just fit in there and be out of sight, out of mind.
The struggle is real, right?
Yeah, the struggle is real. So it's like, hey, are you going to help me pay for my concrete?
Actual food waste, does your like city or local government like make you separate it yet? Or is it like...
Well,
Yeah.
no, it's you should be doing that.
Yeah.
And we've even had, because I have cameras around my house. My neighbors have cameras
Yeah.
around, and all my neighbors were sharing when the inspectors were
They were checking.
They were going through
actual bins.
Yeah, they were going through it.
Wow.
You can see them with their little clipboard and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they were issuing out warnings because education is what they should be doing at first instead of enforcement.
Okay. Yeah.
And eventually it'll be enforcement, so it'll be fines.
Very interesting.
Like,
yeah, we've been like our city went pretty hard on it, like giving out the little bins that you scrape your food waste into, right, and all that stuff, and kind of being very proactive on the education. That's the thing is, so one of the challenges is that there's just not enough being diverted right now, and there's at least if the goal is to meet the requirements of the bill, right? I think you can debate whether the bill was the right decision in the first place, but the goal is after the bill has passed to divert more organic waste away from landfills. But they're not meeting the numbers that they were hoping to be meeting at this point.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is like re-education, retraining people.
It is. It's a different culture.
I mean,
is what it needs to be. And and you and I witnessed this last week with just the glass recycling.
Yeah.
With just recycling, right? You saw all the other things they threw inside with the glasses and stuff, or the bottles, and it's just a matter of us getting into that culture of different practices. I know they're trying to teach it with our youth to know that, hey, this is where this all goes. Otherwise, everybody just throws it all in the same garbage can. And I'm sure you've seen places where, and I recycle all the time, so people know that about me. But like when I see all these cans and bottles in the garbage can, I'm like, there's a separate thing for that. But at the same time, like, you paid a CRV for this. You're basically just throwing that money away.
You're throwing the money away, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why my youngest son, he'll like collect them. Right?
Good.
He'll be like, hey, I'm getting this money.
And I used to do that with my boys, and then we would go to the recycling, and then okay, what do you guys go pick whatever you want to go eat or whatever you want to do with it? It's your money. So that's what we would do.
Yeah, and we've lost a lot of recycling centers too, which has been a big problem. And there's a lot of like imbalance in that market, I think. But yeah, it's I think that's always been the challenge with recycling has been we can't make it so complicated that people just give up, right? And I think, I don't know if you ever go to these ballparks or whatever with like the 4 different cans and like they're all labeled.
And you're trying to figure out where
to like and it just
you feel like an idiot because you don't know which one it goes in yet.
But I almost guarantee none of that is working because people just end up giving up and just throwing it in one of them.
Yes.
And so it's like, I get the goal, but are we rolling it out in a way that actually is workable? Right.
Well, they even have they even have pictures of certain things, but you're like, well, can I put this plate in there because it's got a little bit of food on it? Does it go into this one? Does it go into that one?
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I know that cities are really struggling with this too, and it increased their costs a lot as well, figuring out what to do with this organic waste. So, yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. So another article on self-driving cars. So San Mateo County came out and is basically Waymo, which is one of the self-driving car companies, is potentially expanding into San Mateo County, and the county government there is trying to slow it down. And so there's been kind of this big debate over, can they slow it down? And local governments a lot of times don't have a lot of say over that because the process is governed by the DMV and everything. But I always like bringing these stories up because it's like, anytime you have a technology that's this disruptive, right, it's going to be really challenging to roll out. Were you on the Waymo trip, by the way? Did you go down there when we went down there?
No, we went to like Uber and Lyft.
We went to those other ones too.
I went to that one.
Okay, got it. But I don't know, like because you were former or current retired law enforcement, I think is the way to say it. You're retired law enforcement. How do you feel about self-driving cars and like, how they're going to kind of integrate into society?
Well, it's going to happen eventually at some point. I mean, everybody's seen Total Recall. So, you had that taxi cab driver that's like picking them up.
Yeah, exactly.
And also in my area, one of our local grocery stores has those those little robots that deliver food to the
Do they
houses,
really?
and those were going on for months and
That's
months and
trippy.
months,
Yeah. I don't
and
have
you'd
that.
see the little flag, and you'd see like the little almost look like the Wall-E guy from
That's
Disney
so
thing,
funny.
and they would deliver, and people were doing that left and right, and you would see rows and rows of them coming off out of the store, going down the sidewalks and going to their neighborhoods, and
Really?
so
That's in your neighborhood?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Sometimes people would be a little I don't know, mean about it, and they would kick one over, and you'd see it, and
Yeah.
then they had to send
See,
somebody over to pick it
that's
up. It's
always the problem,
like,
yeah.
really? Come on, just let it do
That's
its thing.
someone's dinner right
Yeah,
there.
that was somebody's dinner. Somebody's waiting on that. So they won't do a certain thing. They won't do alcohol, I don't think, and I don't think they
Okay.
would do like ice cream. I don't think it's
Right,
insulated
something
enough to
that
keep
can,
it.
like, perish
Yeah.
like that, yeah. Interesting. Man, that is trippy. I have not seen that in
Yeah,
any of
it's
my
pretty cool.
communities yet, so that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
The future is gonna be different.
It
For
is.
sure.
It is. But I definitely go back to my total recall statement. You're
Yeah.
gonna get picked up by some taxi cab driver that's just wanting your. Well, now it's just in an app. He's gonna know where they're gonna know where you're going before you get picked up.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. So, another story this year, that on remote work. So one of the things the governor is kind of trying to do is get more state employees back to the office in person, which I think is interesting. Um, but he apparently there's just all this confusion. So like the governor has said one thing, the health department said another thing, the Cal HR said another thing. There's like nobody knows what the actual requirements are. Now the governor's office is saying, well, we didn't say it's a mandate or it's just a proposal. There's all these different things. So nobody knows if there's like actual guidelines, or there are no actual guidelines yet for. But I think that the goal is to get people back at least 2 days a week in person. I have a lot of constituents who work for the state in my district who are not happy about this for
going
pretty
back to the
obvious
building?
reasons. For returning from ending telework, right? From ending telework, I think there's a lot of people that feel it's working pretty well, and are upset about this new kind of potential requirement or whatever. But it's a really it's going to be an interesting discussion this year. And I was just curious if you had any thoughts on it.
Well, definitely people working from home on so many levels. You can look at environmentally. Okay, people aren't driving, less emissions.
Right.
You can look at the mental health part of it. Okay, now I'm at home. I get to see my family a little bit more. I get to see my pet. Those kind of things. I think the biggest factor on this, did they notice productivity go down?
Yeah, that would be.
Did it go up? Did it go down? Were people abusing? I mean, because I guess you could abuse it in a sense.
Yeah.
Just as long as your supervisors and managers are doing their job, I would assume they can keep you in line. But
yeah,
how does that happen? Like my old job, I couldn't.
Yeah, well, of course, right?
I would be in my house and doing a Zoom trying to pull you over and tell you, hey, you were going too fast.
Well, and I think that's why I think it's important that we maintain some flexibility, right? Because like every job's different. There's going to be some jobs you could probably do 100% telework. I don't think we should be forcing those people back to the office. The governor's trying to sell this as a cost savings, but if you really look long term, like telework is a cost saver for the worker and for the state. Like theoretically, if you didn't need that office anymore and you sold it or you repurposed it, you're actually going to save money there on running a building, right? And then for the worker, it's an incredible cost savings. You have, your commuting costs come down,
no mileage, and oil.
Your car maintenance comes down, your environmental impact goes down. There's a lot of obviously benefits for the worker, right? So I understand their perspective on it. I think on the other side, you've got, people like big city mayors that want people to come back.
Well, they're not shopping,
right.
They're not at the restaurants. I'm sure, like something that was brought up that James Gallagher brought up was they're not here shopping at all these local restaurants anymore.
We've seen all these closures.
Yeah.
I mean, downtown Sacramento we've lost a lot of businesses, and that is that is certainly true. But I think it's almost like a transitionary period. Where do you do you repurpose what downtowns look like, right? So maybe people telework and live in other places, but you can build more housing downtown, right? And have people live downtown, and and maybe fix the crime problems downtown. You might have some people come back as well.
Well, you
So
definitely would have less residential burglaries because people would be home.
that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah, so that also helps. But again, going to
Yeah.
future, like we're talking about,
Yeah.
getting picked up by some taxi cab guy. I can even see maybe at some point, if you want to look like into the far future, like Star Wars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you look at the Senate and all that, they all are holograms, right?
Yeah,
we could
that's
be a
true.
hologram from wherever we are in a meeting, like we are right now.
It's like the next version of Zoom.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
We need to get an app going on that. We probably make some
Hey,
money.
you know what? I'm down with that. I think that sounds pretty good to me. As long as it doesn't get to the point you think they're real and like they can just pretend to be somewhere. That's pretty freaky. So last story in our recap. So we're going to be talking a lot about artificial intelligence this year. There was a letter written by a bunch of AI experts, specifically titled "Disrupting the Deepfake Supply Chain." So this is and they actually, I'll just read it here because I'm not an expert on this stuff, but they define deepfakes. Deepfakes refers to non-consensual or grossly misleading AI-generated voices, images, or videos that a reasonable person would mistake as real. So this is the stuff that is intentionally trying to fool you, right? It is incredibly scary when you talk about, child pornography, when you talk about just misleading the public on what maybe a public official might say, for example. That stuff's getting really scary. So I didn't know if you have any thoughts on this, but I definitely think this is an area where we're probably going to need to make some changes.
Well, and I also, going into public safety law enforcement side of it, you're talking about child pornography. So what about like prostitution? I'm sure they're
Yep.
going to find other ways, but hey, I'm not in trouble. This is AI. This isn't a real person.
Well, and so our colleague Joe Patterson in the Assembly is working on some legislation on sextortion, right? But it's really scary now. The sextortion being, right, the maybe someone pretends to be someone they're not. They ask you to send a compromising photograph, and you do, right? This usually is targeted at minors, right? Minors, they get minors to do this. I'm sure you've seen this in your line of work. And then the minor, then they threaten the minor with divulging, this photograph, and in exchange for asking them to do things. This has led to, suicides. It has led to, it is absolutely horrific, this practice. Now there's people using AI to generate these images. They don't even need you to send them one. They simply use AI to generate them and then extort you. That is really scary, and I think, especially for our kids, that is hugely traumatic.
That's a huge problem, because then they really didn't do anything.
Exactly.
They didn't do anything at all, period.
You just have predators or, people seeking to do harm.
You're just targeted.
So it's this certainly is a brand new world. I think the technology is getting to a point where, I think as a legislature, we are going to need to take some action. I think we're probably going to need to take some action at the federal level too, though.
Oh, it won't just be our problem.
Because
It'll
this
be
is
everywhere.
not. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. There was about over 1,000 signatories on this this letter calling to fully criminalize, things like deepfake child pornography, to establish criminal penalties for anyone who knowingly creates or facilitates harmful deepfakes, and require software developers and distributors to prevent their products from being used for deepfakes. Again, that's a policy conversation that I'm probably not knowledgeable enough to have on this podcast at this moment. But I think we are going to need to establish some new penalties for sure.
Do we know who like most of these makers are of these deepfakes, or?
Like who the bad actors are? That's the scary part, right?
Well, I hope it's not the one you were just mentioning earlier that's coming back to the Bay Area.
Oh yeah.
And now,
well, so right, there's certainly there's AI adoption and development happening, right? But I think the question is, just like with any technology, you can use it for good things and you can use it for bad things. And so people that seek to use it for bad things, there has to be consequences. I mean, this is the stuff we're talking about with Prop 47, right? It's like, but I was glad to see people actually calling for criminal penalties and criminalization of a very bad thing, because that is what, deters and stops these crimes from happening or holds people accountable.
It does.
So, it's tried and true. All right, so let's look ahead a little bit. A lot of new bills getting introduced. So this one off the top we were just chatting about before we kicked off here, but AB 2216 prohibits landlords across the state from instituting blanket bans of common household pets in their rental units. Essentially saying, if you're a landowner or homeowner who wants to rent out that property under this bill, if it passes and it was signed by the governor, you could not prohibit someone from owning or bringing a pet with them when they rent your home. Right now, you can say no pets. It also, I believe, goes even further than that and actually restricts charging even a pet deposit. Essentially, some pot of money to, in case that pet does any damage, right?
Which it will do damage regardless. If it's an accident or not, it's going to do some damage.
Yeah. I mean,
there's accidents on the floors. They chew up the sides of the wall, the doors.
Certainly.
There's going to be something.
Well, and like different animals do different damage, right? Cats can be really, really tough. That's why some rental properties allow dogs, but not cats. I mean, there's all kinds of different, right? Like things. What was I don't know if you saw this bill, but was curious what your thoughts were.
I think, again, we should leave that choice to the person who's renting out the property. That's their property.
Yeah.
They should have a choice on how they see it fit. And here we are overregulating again, telling them what they can and can't do. If that person has a pet, then they go somewhere where it's pet friendly, or they find a new home for their pet. Those are just decisions and consequences people have to have.
Yeah.
And here we are now telling that person who's maybe just have this one rental or maybe a couple rentals, that's their way of life. And now you're forcing me to basically take a chance on a person who's going to probably incur damages on their place, not be able to pull a security deposit on it. And now you expect me to pay for it because you made this law. There goes another one of those intentions right there.
Well, and I think another unintended consequence is going to be, you're going to see people back out of the rental housing market. They're going to say, okay, well, if I can't rent my property and protect my property and rent it the way I want to rent it, then I'm not going to rent it.
Or I'm going to rent it for a very high amount to make sure I cover any and everybody.
That's another great
point.
And
then how is this affordable housing going to be?
You're either going to push up the cost or you're going to push those people out of the market. So you're going to reduce the supply of actual housing.
Correct.
Right.
And terrible for affordable housing. If that's what we really, truly want to do, this is not going to help. No,
I think you're absolutely right. And I think, again, a lot of unintended consequences here. I think it's actually particularly, out there to say you have to allow pets, but you also can't make up for any of the damages. I mean, that's pretty bad. I have dogs. I love my dogs. My dogs are great, but my dogs, they do stuff that I don't really want.
So my dogs stay outside.
There you go.
My dogs are outside for a reason. And like my wife, she hates dog hair, cat hair anywhere on it. She has lint rollers everywhere.
She would not want to go in my house because I have a golden retriever.
Oh, then and she would be lint rolling right afterwards.
She's like, if we do dinner together, we'll go out. Yeah.
Yes.
My dog is an indoor dog and he's very hairy. So, but no, it's I love my dogs, but the reality is, and my dogs are the biggest wusses you'll ever meet. Like they're not outdoor dogs. They're like the opposite of outdoor dogs. They're a lot like me, actually. They love being inside. But no, it's I love them, but you have to acknowledge, as a pet owner, pets are, they're amazing. They bring a lot of benefits, but they do, bring more wear and tear on where they live.
Well, and if you also look at it as just a parent, if I have young kids, am I going to feel safe having a place that has a pool? Second story? Am I going to be afraid of the stairs? I mean, there's all these precautions that I take on with my kids.
Yeah.
that pet owners should be doing with their pets as well.
I wonder if the author of this bill is going to use that argument. We don't require kid deposits because kids destroy houses, man. Like,
There's
so
another one
that's
right there.
actually, no, I'm not advocating for this, by the way.
Yeah.
I have been around a lot of small children over as being a parent over the years, and they're pretty rough on houses too.
It can be. My
Um,
grandkids.
all right. So, by the way, I meant to mention it off the top here, but total number of bills. Don't look. How many bills? I'll make you guess. How many bills you think were introduced this year by the bill deadline?
2,600.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's actually a little less,
Oh,
which is good. But 619 Senate bills, 1,505 Assembly bills for a total of 2124.
okay.
So, but still, over 2,000 bills
A
introduced
lot of bills.
for you and me to analyze and debate this year, and obviously a lot of our colleagues as well. But that is a ton of bills, and you are a big part of the problem. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
yes. I think we had 24
Yeah.
last go around or so. We had 26 this go
Yeah,
around.
you're just like pushing the envelope on
Yeah.
this, man. I'm sure your bills are great though, versus some of the other bills we're going to see this year.
And I usually tell people I prefer quality over quantity.
There you go.
But you have your set package, and then somebody comes to you with an idea. It's like, oh, that sounds really good. I want to help you out. That's a great idea.
I know.
And yeah, we can wait till next year. But if we have the time to work on it right now, we'll work on it right now. But
well, and there's all different types of bills too. There's bills that are fixing like a problem, right? Or like fixing,
some language correction.
Yeah, fixing like maybe a problem in the code or a problem in, some interpretation of something. But then there's bills, I think the ones that are really hard on the legislature are the ones that are like trying to basically shake up and just change, whether good or bad, trying to change something in a big way. So they definitely have different impacts,
Well,
right?
hopefully 1,000 of those is just a couple language fixes.
Exactly, right? All consent, yeah. No, we don't want them all on consent because I bet there's some bad stuff in there, actually. Little quick note on gas prices, because I know we're going to be having this conversation a lot this year. We're currently, I think I tweeted this over the weekend or something, but we're currently the second highest gas prices in the nation right now.
Who's first?
I think we're second to Hawaii.
Hawaii,
I believe. But we rotate back and forth. Sometimes we're first. I think this point in time we're second, but
that's not a title we want, by the way.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Well, and guess how good our roads are?
Yeah,
they're 46th in the nation. So
I found out that our roads. So there's a PSI test or whatever on roads, and our roads aren't to standards as other states are. They can hold a heavier weight of a vehicle, as opposed to us. And so I'm wondering if that's also
interesting.
I'm almost sure that's one of the factors. And obviously, truckers are asking for more weight because they're expected to go batteries, and batteries weigh a lot, and they can't carry as much payload.
Yep.
So now they're making 2 trips with the same payload they would have had with a gasoline or
so they
diesel.
want to be able to carry more.
So they want to be able to carry more, which puts more weight on our roads, which is like, we can't do that because we're already overweight as it is.
Yeah.
And so maybe I think something in transportation needs to be looked at as far as why are these other states pouring their roads to carry this heavy weight and California's not?
That's really interesting. Yeah, that would definitely,
I
especially
just learned
because
about it a couple weeks
California
ago.
is pushing the hardest on
Yes,
EVs,
on
which are the
EVs.
heaviest. So
If anything, we should be leading that industry on the roads.
Wow, that's incredible. So from the SACB, today we're number 2, and I think gas prices are projected to get above $5 a gallon this summer. So that's not good. But in addition to that, a nearly 2 decades old program, this is in the SACB, to slash climate warming emissions from transportation could cause California gas prices to spike as much as 50 cents a gallon in the next 2 years. So you're adding another 50 cents on top of that because of the policies we've passed, because of the Air Resources Board that the governor oversees, right? Continuing to push policies that continue to increase our costs, whether it's energy, whether it's gas, whether it's groceries. I mean, at every level, we're seeing this. We don't often make the connection, but every one of these decisions is increasing costs for California drivers and consumers.
Well, I would hope it doesn't take a rocket scientist for the voters out there to figure that one out.
Yeah.
And so right after March 5th, I bet the prices are going to go back up. Not even June. I think it's going to go the week after March 5th.
Might be right.
And then before November, they're going to drop again.
I think
that's what my crystal ball's telling me.
I
right
like
now.
that prediction. So we'll check back in on that one. But on the our next story here, we're working on putting warning labels on gas stoves. So don't worry, Juan.
So what does it say?
So should your gas stove come with a warning label? There's a California bill this year that wades into this issue, basically requiring AB 2513 requiring gas stoves by January 2025 to attach a warning label that talks about emissions and I don't even know all their all the requirements that are going to be on this label. I think the warning label should be, your food will never taste better than when it's cooked on a gas stove. That's what I think the warning label should say.
I would say the only thing they're going to get from that is somebody's going to try and rip it off. They need to put something like, if they're trying to encourage people to go to like electric or whatever they're trying to do, is maybe say, here's a rebate if you want to switch this gas stove into something else.
And I guarantee they don't care. Like 1% of people will do that. Nobody wants electric stoves.
When I moved to my house, I took the electric out and put gas in.
There you go. So you went the other direction.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And my son did that just recently too.
It's such a remarkable difference. Yeah. It's such a remarkable difference in terms of, cooking and
and when I flip my tortillas on my stove, I gotta have it right.
I almost said the warning label should say something about great tortillas.
Great tortillas, yes.
There is a bipartisan tortilla caucus movement in California too, by the way.
Is it really?
Yeah. And it's people that love tortillas and they refuse to go electric. And it's like, I don't know.
We'll see where that goes.
I eat a lot of tortillas.
Yeah,
so.
I had 3 this morning.
I just think this whole thing, I think it's a little silly. I think, the warning label thing, it's just pushing us more towards, they're trying to get us away from natural gas and to electric stoves. But I think you're going to get a lot of, again, everyday Californians that really are not excited about that.
Well, then environmentally, these labels, are they going to be recyclable? Are they going to be toxic? What?
There you go. So I think that'll wrap there. So I did want to say, we got this little bad bill list real quick. I didn't put it in the notes, but there's a couple on here that I just thought were really interesting. AB 2744 prohibits vehicles from turning right unless there is a dedicated right turn lane, and prohibits adding new right turn lanes.
What's wrong with turning right?
I need to. It's slow, right? I'm assuming because it slows if you don't have a right turn lane, right, it slows the person behind you down.
It does. And now these cars are on the road longer. Talk about emissions that way.
Yeah, that's true.
And not getting to work on time, being late, makes them want to drive faster.
But how do you do that and then prohibit adding right turn lanes? That's what I don't. So what, you have to make an existing lane a right turn lane? Is that what that means?
No, I would say you can't even do the existing lane. You just can't make a new right turn lane.
Every time you hit a stoplight, it just ends. The lane ends and turns into a right turn lane.
And you just wait.
I clearly have not looked into this very much, but it sounds on a number of different levels very complicated. And I'm trying to pull up the bill here because I'm like, I don't even understand what this. Okay, so the bill beginning January 1st, 2025, prohibit you're writing diagrams over here.
Yeah.
Prohibit the addition of a right turn lane or travel lane within 20 feet of a marked or unmarked crosswalk. And it would also authorize local authority to install a bicycle lane. The bill would prohibit the stopping, standing, or parking of a vehicle on a median. The bill would clarify that the turn is a right turn and would only allow the right turn if the right turn is from an exclusive right turn lane. That's a lot of the word right turn.
Well, everybody's going to have to go back to driving school now, too.
Holy cow. So, yeah. So we'll get into that more when I figure out what the heck it is. But yeah, that
Right
one kind of
turns.
stuck out to
Right
me.
turns.
And then AB 2042 imposes restrictions on the use of an unleashed police canine to arrest or apprehend a person. It provides that the restrictions must prohibit the canine from biting in any circumstance unless there is an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer or another person by the person against whom the canine is used. You are the expert on this issue, so I wanted to see if you had any quick thoughts on that one.
So, as you may recall, last year, Assemblymember Jackson tried to introduce a canine bill last year as well. I don't. This is a different bill number. Is this the same bill number?
I believe it's new,
Okay.
but yeah.
So, obviously, the canine world, they have their opinions that they have brought into this, and they have spoken very loudly and constant. And so, another bill, I don't know if you brought up 3241, uh, is coming up and supported by law enforcement
Okay.
that
Yeah.
actually addresses the actual issues
Okay.
that could be a thing, and also standardizing
Okay.
with canines. Basically, the 2042 that you talked about kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a canine.
Right.
I get the images and stuff like that were brought up, but we're talking about from the 60s, maybe into the 70s. But canine work is much different, and something that frustrates me is the apprehensions is what they got into, but they didn't talk about surrenders. The surrender is the bread and butter of a canine unit. So
Yeah.
when I show up on scene with the canine and the offender gives up, that's a surrender.
Yeah.
If the offender takes off, runs, and the dog is sent to go apprehend, and the offender gives up, and the dog is given a command to stop, that's a surrender. And people don't understand it, but that is how they're trained. I've caught dogs for a long time, so on the arm and stuff like that with obviously protection gear, and I've had them almost up into the point where they were going to come to me, and I gave up in the scenario to test the dog. The canine handler gave them the command to stop, and they did. And that's all part of training, and that's why they train so much.
Yeah.
And this is something that we tried pointing out with. I always tried to coin the frame or frame the term, I guess you'd say, is trading bites for bullets is what we were doing in that old bill. And you can't recall a bullet. You can recall a canine.
Absolutely.
And you're most likely going to be recovering from a canine bite than you are a bullet.
Absolutely.
So that's something else that I want I think those also in the legislature to realize.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. Bites for bullets.
Yes.
I think that's huge. And yeah, just addressing the training issue, I think is a great way to approach it. So I appreciate your work on that. I'm excited to see how that turns out.
And I'm very excited also that a lot of the canine associations, if not all of them in California, are also trying to do what they can to help.
Yeah.
To make this more transparent and more helpful for everybody. But getting rid of the canines is not the answer. It's just like Prop 47. Get rid of any consequences was not the answer. You need to meet in the middle. You need to work on that.
Yeah.
And so this is something we're trying to prevent.
Well, it's a good transition. I know we got to get you out of here shortly. We're going to wrap up momentarily, but I wanted to play our clip of the week real quick for you and get your thoughts.
Good morning. Chad Bianco, Riverside County Sheriff. We are here today because California public safety is in crisis. Crime is steadily on the rise, and our public safety policy is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the nation. I want to make this clear, and I want there to be no mistake in what I am saying. This is not by accident. The driving force in our crisis is a radical, progressive agenda fraudulently called criminal justice reform. This is nothing short of a sick and twisted social experiment where law enforcement is the bad guy and criminals are somehow victims of society and not responsible for their actions, their crimes, or accountable to their countless victims. This agenda began with the passage of AB 109, the so-called Public Safety Realignment Act. State government failed to take responsibility for prison overcrowding or their failure to build more prisons, and instead forced county jails to house state inmates while simultaneously releasing thousands of felons early.
So he goes on to talk about, obviously, the three things that he basically says are, have led to this crime spree that we're seeing now is what he just mentioned: realignment, AB 109, Proposition 47, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast, and then Proposition 57 in 2016. So these are really the three kind of bad bills, or bad, I should say, policies that we need to change in order to get things back on track. So wanted to get your thoughts. I know there's very passionate words coming from Sheriff Bianca, who's the Riverside County Sheriff.
Correct. And I've messaged on all three of those as well. And AB 109, if we just take that and bring it down to the local level, not every county agency was prepared to hold state prisoners. Not everybody has a facility that can hold them and be part of that. So now those county sheriffs need to decide, who do I keep and who do I release? And so now that's in their hands, that they were forced to do, whereas normally they would be in prison. And we've shut down many prisons to the point to where they don't want to use them up at all. So then you lost those jobs. Those communities lost that income for those that lived in the area. And then those prisoners that used to be there are now released into the communities. And we talk about rehabilitation. How do they get rehabilitated if we're just going to let them go? That's one thing that gets me with shortening these sentences.
Yeah.
Part of that sentence is also for them to get rehabilitated. And if you don't keep them in there long enough to get rehabilitated, then what service did you do that person?
It's true.
It may be nice for them to get back to their family, but they also need to remember that they do, one, like was mentioned, consequences.
Yeah.
We need to have people, take on the consequence, own up to what they did, and learn from it.
Yeah.
And how can they learn from it if we're just going to let them out again? It's like giving the kid the time out for like 10 seconds. Like, what are they going to learn from that? They don't learn anything. Make them at least do something to earn it. So that's a big thing. Prop 47, which we've talked about many times, safe schools, safe neighborhoods, had nothing to do with that.
Yep.
And they put these flashy terms on it, and I tell people, I'm pretty sure I voted for it also, because who can say no to safe schools, safe neighborhoods?
Yeah.
It's great on messaging there on their part. And even with 57 as well. They all are ways to, one, make the state less responsible and send it to the counties. And now the counties have to deal with it. So now it becomes their problem. And now you're letting these people who normally would be in prison doing their time and again, rehabilitating, but now they're just being out and they're committing more crimes again. They're going back to what they know. It's just the way of life. It's kind of like with the homeless. You can't just put them in a house and expect them to start living a normal life.
Right.
You need to domesticate them again. Is what it is. And that's why you have programs that slowly integrate them back into becoming domesticated.
Yeah.
And it may sound terrible because it sounds like I'm talking like a wild animal, but that's basically what they have become. And now they need to be taught to get back into society, how to you sleep on a bed, you make your bed. Whereas now that you go into some of them, they're sleeping on the floor still. And like sometimes you'll see the dog sleeping up on the bed because they haven't been domesticated to that point. And it's not their fault. It's just something that takes time. And so that's what these props and these ABs, this AB 109 also have failed to do. I also look at with the criminal aspect. Because we don't always look into the rehabilitation portion. All we talk about is getting them back to their families, getting them back to society.
Yeah.
But you're really setting them up for failure.
No, the rehabilitation part is so critical. And, I think there's certainly people that can be rehabilitated. Absolutely. And some people may never get there. Right. And we have to be honest about that as well.
And you have to put them somewhere, and putting them in the community and putting them at risk is not the answer.
Yeah. Well, appreciate your thoughts on that. To end on a slightly lighter note, there was this great piece in the Wall Street Journal this morning about, is it ever okay to have an 8 a.m. meeting? I wanted to get your quick thought.
For me, it's okay.
All right. I knew you were going to say that.
For me, and for those who know me, I don't mind getting up early. I actually get up real early just to come to work.
Yeah.
And with the hour and a half commute.
There you go.
But 8 a.m. It gets the day going. Otherwise, I just linger around waiting, and I don't mind at 8 a.m.
You know what? I appreciate that perspective. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. You don't give me an 8 a.m. meeting. That's what I always tell my staff. Anyway, hey, thanks, Juan. Appreciate you coming on again. Any final thoughts?
No, keep doing this.
Right.
Keep people informed.
Yeah, no, thanks for all your good thoughts. If you want to share ideas for future shows, you can email us at pointoforderpod@gmail.com. You can subscribe, follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Threads at Point of Order Pod. You can also follow today's host on Twitter or X at Joshua_Hoover for myself and at Juan Alanis, ALANISCA. Thanks. I'll see you next time.
All right.